I had just picked up my daughter-in-law's coat from the dry cleaner when the owner, a man I'd known for years, suddenly pulled me aside. He leaned close and whispered, "Listen to me carefully. Take your grandkids and get out of this town before sunrise." If you're listening to this, please like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. I froze, my heart skipping, and asked, "Why?" That's when he pulled out a little plastic bag, his hand shaking, and said in a trembling voice, "Because I found this inside your daughter-in-law's coat." When I saw what was in that bag, I couldn't breathe. Without even thinking, I imagined holding my grandchildren close, desperate to protect them. That day had started so normally. The sun was still burning hot in the evening, my blouse sticking to me with sweat, while I carried a heavy basket home from the market. I walked slowly down the old street, where the cracked paint on the walls showed just how long this town had been standing. On the corner stood Martin's Dry Cleaning, the faded wooden sign creaking in the wind. I pulled the wrinkled yellow claim ticket from my purse. That morning, my daughter-in-law Emily had pressed it into my hand. "Mom, please grab my wool coat from Martin's. I've got meetings all day," she'd said in a soft but rushed voice. I had nodded without thinking much. For me, it was just another errand, one of many I always did for my kids. Inside, the place smelled of fabric softener and hot steam. Mr. Martin, an older man with glasses sliding down his nose, was behind the counter flipping through a notebook with his thin fingers. I handed him the ticket. He glanced at it, gave a small nod, and disappeared into the back. Usually, he sent the younger guy who worked for him, but this time he went himself, slow, like he wanted to stall. I stood waiting, running my hand along the basket's handle, thinking only about what to cook for the kids that night. When he came back, he held Emily's coat, neatly wrapped in plastic. But instead of giving it to me, he stopped. His eyes darted around the shop, making sure nobody else was there. Before I could ask what was wrong, his rough, calloused hand gripped my arm. "Margaret," he whispered in a hoarse voice, pulling me behind a worn curtain into the back of the shop. The smell of bleach and steam hit me hard. Piles of clothes waiting to be pressed leaned against the walls like crooked towers. He reached under the counter, opened a shaky old drawer, and pulled out a small clear plastic bag. Inside was a bank transfer receipt with numbers so big, I had to look twice. Millions of dollars. And next to it, a photograph. My grandkids, Olivia and Jack. Red circles had been drawn over their little faces in a messy, angry scrawl. My whole body turned cold. "Mr. Martin, what is this?" I whispered, my voice breaking. His eyes filled with fear. "Margaret, you have to take those children and leave. Don't waste a second. You need to be gone before sunrise." His voice cracked, half pleading. He shoved the bag into my hand. "I can't keep this here. It's too dangerous." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the coat. I tucked the bag deep in my pocket, feeling like I was carrying a bomb. When I stepped outside, the world was going on like normal, the squeal of a bus braking, kids laughing as they ran, the shouts of vendors. But all I could hear was his warning, echoing like a funeral bell, "Before sunrise." When I finally reached the house, the silence inside was heavy. My son Michael was away on a business trip in Chicago, leaving me alone with the children. The place, once filled with Olivia and Jack's laughter, now felt hollow and cold. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Mom, I've got an unexpected meeting. I'll be really late. Please take care of the kids." I stared at her words, unease growing in my chest. Was it true, or just a cover for something worse? In the living room, Olivia was building a blockhouse, her big eyes shining. "Grandma, look. My house has a chimney," she squealed. Jack, only 4, sat beside her hugging a toy dinosaur, humming softly. My heart clenched. Hours earlier, I believed they were safe. But now, all I could see were those red circles over their faces. I forced a smile. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Keep playing. Grandma will make dinner." But my mind kept spinning, replaying Mr. Martin's words. "Leave before sunrise." I slipped into my bedroom, locked the door, and with shaking hands, called my friend Grace, a nurse I trusted with my life. We'd been through everything together, from raising kids to caring for my late husband during long hospital nights. If anyone could help me, it was her. "Grace," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's me, Margaret. I need help. Do you know a reliable cab driver?" Someone who can take us on a long trip tonight. She was quiet for a moment. Margaret, what's going on? Why the rush? I took a deep breath, trying not to cry. I can't explain right now. Just, please. All right, she said firmly. My brother drives. He's discreet. I'll call him. Give me 10 minutes. I hung up, heart pounding, and headed for the kitchen, my hands moving fast. I grabbed some bread from the cabinet, sliced cheese, and packed the kids' favorite cookies. I slipped a couple of water bottles into a bag, my mind racing over what else I should bring. I had no plan, no idea where we were going. All I knew was that my grandchildren couldn't be left hungry or unprotected. From the kitchen, I glanced into the living room. Olivia was showing Jack how to build a little bridge with blocks. Their laughter cut straight through me. They were so carefree, so innocent, completely unaware of the storm about to crash down on us. For a moment, I wondered if I was wrong, if maybe I was panicking over nothing. But then that photograph with the red circles flashed in my mind, and I knew there was no going back. I hurried into their room and pulled clothes from the closet, Olivia's favorite blue sweater, Jack's superhero pajamas, socks, anything I could grab. I stuffed in the yarn doll Olivia. Always hugged at night, and Jack's little toy car he never let go of. Everything went into one big suitcase, messy and rushed, but I didn't care. The street light flickered through the curtains, making my heart pound harder. I yanked them shut, afraid some neighbor might see and start asking questions. In a town this small, everyone knows everything. My phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah. The taxi is here. It's on the corner. My brother's name is Mark. You can trust him. I inhaled deeply, trying to steady myself. I went back to the living room, knelt beside Olivia, and whispered as gently as I could, "Sweetheart, put on your coat. We're going for a ride." Her eyes widened. A ride? At night? Where to, Grandma? I forced a smile, though inside I was breaking. Someplace fun. But we've got to leave right now, or we'll miss it. Jack rubbed his eyes, already whining. I'm sleepy, Grandma. I pulled a piece of candy from my pocket and slipped it into his hand. Here, be a good boy. You can sleep later. He grinned, instantly forgetting his complaint. I scooped him up, took Olivia's hand, and rushed toward the waiting cab. The hallway to the door felt endless, my sandals scraping on the cold floor, my body trembling. I buckled them both into the back seat. Olivia clutched her doll and studied me with curious eyes, still trusting. Jack yawned, resting his head on his sister's shoulder. I sat beside them, clutching the heavy suitcase to my chest, my heart hammering. The driver, a middle-aged man with weary eyes, caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Where to, ma'am? He asked. His voice carried a note of concern. I swallowed hard. The bus station. As fast as you can. The car pulled away, shattering the stillness of the night. Through the window, I watched my house disappear into darkness, swallowed like a grave that held secrets too heavy to bear. The bus station at midnight buzzed like a restless marketplace. Neon signs blinked green and red, their glow spilling over faded posters. Vendors shouted, buses honked, wheels screeched against concrete. That chaos, strangely, made me feel safer, like we could disappear into the crowd, unseen. I held Olivia's hand tightly. Jack slept against my shoulder, his warm little breaths reminding me I had to stay strong, no matter how broken I felt. At the counter, I tried to keep my voice steady. 3 tickets to Nashville. The last trip of the night. The ticket clerk, a tired man with a crooked mustache, gave me a long look before sliding 3 tickets across the counter. It's leaving now. Hurry, or you'll miss it. I paid quickly, turned to Olivia, and forced another smile. We're going to visit a distant relative, sweetheart. We'll have a good time. Her big eyes studied me. Which relative, Grandma? Do I know them? I stroked her hair and avoided her gaze. It's someone from the family you haven't met. You'll see. Just get some rest, it's a long ride. She nodded, hugging her doll, her gaze drifting to the bus window. The engine roared, carrying us into the night. Jack's head lolled on my shoulder, his tiny fingers still gripping his toy car. Through the window, the streetlights blurred past like fading memories. Nashville, the place where my husband and I had once started our life, where Daniel was born, was the only destination that made sense. I prayed it would be safe, even just for a little while. By the time we arrived, dawn was breaking. Pale light spread across the rooftops as I carried Jack and guided Olivia to a small motel tucked behind the square. The room smelled of dampness, with a worn double bed and faded sheets. I tucked the kids in, their faces soft in sleep. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" Olivia murmured drowsily. The question stabbed through me. I brushed her hair back and whispered, "She's busy, sweetheart. She'll be here soon." But I knew it wasn't true. Emily, once the daughter-in-law I loved, was now a shadow I didn't understand. And the bag in my coat pocket felt heavier than ever. The receipt, the photo, the warning. I thought of Michael, my son, so far away. I wanted to call, to tell him everything. But if I was wrong, I'd ruin his family. If I was right, how could I ever tell him that the woman he loved might be betraying us all? In the middle of that storm of thoughts, one idea came clear. I had to go to church. Father James, the old priest in Nashville, had been there for me when my husband died. If anyone could guide me now, it was him. So the next morning, I woke Olivia and Jack, dressed them, and said brightly, "Come to church with me. Afterward, I'll buy you ice cream." Jack's eyes lit up. "Chocolate, Grandma?" I smiled and nodded, though inside my stomach twisted with dread. We walked to St. Mary's Church, its old stone walls and ringing bells giving off a calm I hadn't felt in days. Olivia clung to my hand, while Jack ran ahead, his toy car dangling from his fingers. Watching them, all I prayed for was that their innocence could last forever. Inside, Father Thomas recognized me right away. His white hair caught the sunlight through the stained glass, and his eyes, kind but sharp, looked straight into mine. "Margaret, it's been too long," he said warmly. "What brings you and your grandchildren here? Is something wrong?" I could only nod, my throat too tight to speak in front of the kids. After Mass, I let Olivia and Jack run around the churchyard with other children while I asked Father Thomas for a private word. He led me to a quiet little room behind the altar. The smell of old wood and candle wax somehow steadied my breath. Gathering every ounce of courage, I told him everything: the coat, the transfer receipt with an impossible sum, and the photo of my grandchildren with those 2 red circles scrawled across their faces. My hands shook as I gave him the plastic bag. Father Thomas stayed silent for a long while, his hands clasped, his face growing more serious with every second. At last, he sighed. "Margaret, this is beyond a priest's role. It's not just a family matter. This is far greater, and dangerous. You need someone who understands the law." His eyes softened with worry. "I know a woman who can help. Rachel, a skilled lawyer here in the parish. She'll know what to do." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. That afternoon, in a small confessional room, I met Rachel. She was young, maybe in her early 30s, with cropped hair and eyes that didn't miss a thing. With latex gloves on, she carefully opened the bag, studying the receipt under the dim yellow light. "This transaction code is tied to a shell company, hidden through an offshore account," she murmured, her fingers flying across her laptop keys. "It doesn't really exist." She paused, pointing at the last line. "Signed by Victor Alvarez." The name meant nothing to me, but the look Rachel and Father Thomas exchanged said everything. "That man has a long history of fraud and laundering," Rachel whispered. "This is not simple, Margaret." My hands trembled against the wooden table. "But why my grandchildren? Why were their faces marked like that?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She only looked at me with deep compassion. "We need more time to investigate. For now, you and the children must stay somewhere safe. I'll reach out to colleagues I can trust." Father Thomas laid a hand gently on my shoulder. "Margaret, God will protect you and your grandchildren. But you must stay strong for them." I held Olivia and Jack close as we left the church. The bells rang out across the gray streets, reminding me I wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. The next morning, I stood outside a modest house in Nashville, my chest burning. Olivia and Jack played in the yard of my trusted friend, Helen, a retired nurse. Through the wooden fence, I watched Olivia teach Jack how to blow bubbles, their laughter light as crystal. I smiled, but it felt heavy, like I was stealing borrowed moments of their joy. "Helen, could you watch them for the day?" I asked carefully. "I need to go back to my town, just to handle something important." Her sharp eyes searched mine, wanting to ask questions, but she only nodded. Don't worry, Margaret. The kids will be fine here. I'll spoil them with pudding and bedtime stories. I squeezed her hand, my gratitude too heavy for words, and boarded the first bus back. All the way, the plastic bag in my coat pocket weighed me down like a curse. The fields outside blurred past, but all I could see was that photograph. 2 little faces, circled in red. Doubt gnawed at me. Was I wrong to leave the children behind? But I knew, if I wanted to protect them, I had to uncover the truth. When the bus stopped at my old street, the family house rose before me, silent and cold. No longer a home, but a place of shadows. My hand shook as I pulled the spare key from my purse. The rusty gate groaned, the sound slicing the empty air. I turned quickly, but the street lay deserted, only a few dogs barking in the distance. Inside, the living room was untouched, exactly as I'd left it. Emily's blanket tossed across the couch, a half-empty cup of coffee stained on the table. The air hung thick, like the walls themselves were hiding secrets. I didn't hesitate. I went straight to the bedroom. I remembered the small gray safe tucked under the closet. Months ago, on a night when Emily had too much to drink, she'd laughed and told me the code. Oh, don't tell Michael, but I never changed it. May 12, 2018. Our wedding date. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, it was the key to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted. I dragged the safe out, brushing away dust. My hands trembled as I dialed the numbers. 120518. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Stacks of bills stared back at me. Tens, maybe hundreds of thousands. More money than we had ever dreamed of. Alongside them were passports and IDs, all under different names. Maria Lopez, David Romero, Elena Cruz. Ghosts staring up at me. And then, tucked at the bottom, 3 business-class tickets. From Chicago to Madrid. Names printed clear as day: Emily, Olivia, Jack. Michael's name wasn't there. I checked them again and again, hoping I'd made a mistake. But the truth stabbed through me like a blade. She was planning to run. Emily was going to take my grandchildren and leave my son behind, as if he were nothing more than a burden in her way. My hands shook as I opened another envelope. Inside was a photo, Emily smiling brightly beside a man in a sharp black suit. On the back, a handwritten note, my Alvarez. That name, Victor Alvarez, matched the signature I had already seen on the transfer receipt. The room spun. The air grew heavy, and I sank to the floor with my back against the dresser, the picture slipping from my fingers. Emily, the daughter-in-law I had loved like my own child. The one who stood beside me in the kitchen for Sunday dinners, the one who cried in my arms when Michael lost his job. That woman was betraying us. She wasn't only betraying my son, she was planning to steal my 2 grandchildren as if they were part of some deal. I thought of Olivia, her innocent smile when she handed me her drawings. Of Jack, always hugging my legs while I baked. How could Emily be so cruel? How could she circle their faces in red, as if they were nothing but merchandise? The rumble of my neighbor's truck outside made me jump. I shoved everything back into the safe, fumbling so badly I dropped a passport. My hands were slick with sweat as I picked it up, pushed the safe back, and closed it. My heart thundered like I was already guilty of some crime. As I moved toward the door, I noticed a torn envelope sticking out of the trash can, its foreign bank logo catching the light. I snatched it up without a thought and slipped it into my jacket pocket. When the door shut behind me, I walked down the street as though floating, the proof of a terrible plan weighing on me. Emily was planning to escape with Alvarez, taking a fortune and, worst of all, taking Olivia and Jack. By the time I returned to the motel in Nashville, the midday light was cutting through the thin curtains. Olivia and Jack had just woken from their nap. Their hair was messy, their eyes still soft with sleep. "Grandma, when are we going home to Mommy?" Olivia asked. Her question stabbed me like a knife. I knelt, smoothed her hair, and forced a smile. "Soon, sweetheart. She's busy right now. Stay with me just a little longer, okay?" My throat closed around the words. Jack hugged his dinosaur tight. "Grandma, I want cookies." I handed him a package from my bag, hiding the tremor in my fingers. I took them out to the motel courtyard, where an old swing creaked in the breeze. "Play for a while. I'll watch you," I told them, my voice steady though inside I felt like I was about to collapse. The money, the passports, the plane tickets, the photo, none of it would leave my mind. Later that afternoon, Rachel arrived. Her steps were brisk, but her eyes carried worry. With her were two men in plain clothes, their stiff posture betraying who they were. They introduced themselves calmly, flashing badges. "Ma'am, I'm Agent Carter," the taller one said, his voice firm. "This is my partner, Agent Brooks. We need to see everything you found." I led them to the small motel room, where a wooden table had become my battlefield. One by one, I laid out the transfer receipt, the bank envelope, the photo of Emily with Alvarez, the 3 tickets to Madrid, the stack of false IDs. Each object felt like a blade carving me open all over again. Agent Brooks opened one of the sealed phones, linking it to a small device. His laptop screen lit with lines of code racing down. "We can recover deleted data," he said flatly. "These things always hold more than people expect." I sat frozen, my hands clasped tight, my pulse hammering. Outside, Olivia and Jack laughed on the swings, their joy a cruel contrast to the darkness spilling across that screen. After minutes that felt like hours, Brooks turned the laptop toward me. The first folder that opened was full of photos. And the first image was my grandchildren again, their sweet faces circled in red, distorted like targets. I stopped breathing. Agent Carter leaned closer, lowering his voice gently. "Ma'am, this isn't random. That mark is a symbol used by human trafficking networks." The word trafficking cracked through me like thunder. He zoomed in, showing numbers scribbled in the corner. "That's a transaction code. The red circle means target selected. The children are part of a larger plan." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. I couldn't let Olivia and Jack see me break. "You mean, they plan to sell my grandchildren?" I whispered. Carter's jaw tightened. He gave me a look filled with pity. "We don't know the whole picture yet. But yes, the evidence points to an organized network. And the woman here," he tapped Emily's face on the screen, "is most likely involved." Rachel set her hand softly on my shoulder. Her voice trembled too. "Margaret, this is no longer a family matter. It's a federal case. We'll do everything possible to protect the children." But nothing eased the storm raging inside me. Emily, the same woman who held my hand when Jack was born, who shared so many dinners and laughs, was now part of a world that saw 2 innocent kids as nothing but assets. Brooks kept typing, pulling up fragments of deleted texts. One popped onto the screen, short and chilling. 2 targets selected. Ensure timely delivery. It had been sent from Emily's number. Signed, V.A. Victor Alvarez. The blood in my body froze solid. "She really did this," I whispered, not even sure if I was speaking to them or to myself. Rachel gripped my hand gently. "Margaret, I know this feels unbearable. But you need to stay calm, for them." They told me to act as if nothing had changed. But in my heart, I knew everything had. "Do not communicate with Emily," Agent Carter told me firmly. "She must not know what you've uncovered. We need time to investigate further." I nodded, but my heart was a tangled mess. How could I act normal when every breath carried the weight of betrayal? How could I look into Olivia's and Jack's eyes, knowing their mother had planned to sell them like property? Back in the motel room, I tried to keep things light. Jack crawled into my lap. "Grandma, tell me the vampire story," he begged. I wrapped my arms around him and began the tale he loved, though my voice cracked like I was lost in my own nightmare. Olivia sat nearby, humming as she drew with colored pencils, her little shoulders relaxed. Looking at them, both, my chest ached like it was being torn apart. They had no idea how close their world had come to shattering. Thunder rolled outside, and rain began hammering the tin roof, matching the chaos inside my chest. I pulled the curtains tight and hugged them close, trying to shield them from both storms, the one outside and the one inside me. The next morning, a black car with no plates rolled up to the motel. I knew it was federal. Rachel had called earlier. "Margaret, today we'll plan everything," she'd said, her voice steady but carrying a shadow of concern. I pulled on a sweater, woke Olivia and Jack, and asked them to stay with Helen one more day. "Where are you going, Grandma?" Olivia asked, her big eyes filled with curiosity. I stroked her hair, forcing a smile. "I'm going to see an old friend, sweetheart. I'll be back this afternoon." Jack just nibbled on a cookie and nodded, not asking more. I kissed them both and climbed into the car, my heart as heavy as stone. The federal office in Nashville was hidden down a narrow street, no sign outside, nothing to suggest how many dark secrets passed through its walls. Inside, they led me to a small meeting room that smelled of stale coffee and paper. Rachel was waiting at the long table. Across from her sat 3 officers, Carter, Brooks, and a female agent named Reynolds, whose sharp eyes carried both steel and sympathy. "Margaret, we've reviewed the evidence," Carter said gravely. "This connects to an international crime ring. We'll need your help to bring down Emily and Alvarez." They laid out the plan: stage a disappearance, make Emily and Alvarez believe Olivia and Jack were gone, and pressure them into panicking. "We'll monitor all communications," Reynolds explained, pointing to a map on the screen. "We've tapped Emily's phone and locked onto Alvarez's number. Once they reach out to each other, we'll have enough." My heart squeezed. "And my grandchildren, will they be safe?" I whispered. Reynolds placed her hand on my shoulder. "They'll be in a secure shelter. You can video call them whenever you need." They walked me to another room, where a social worker was playing with Olivia and Jack among piles of toys. Olivia was coloring, Jack stacking Lego blocks into a spaceship. I nearly broke down. They didn't know I was protecting them from their own mother. "Margaret, I'll take care of them as if they were mine," the social worker said softly. I hugged both children tight, pressing my cheek against their hair, before leaving them behind. It felt like I was leaving pieces of my own heart in that room. That night, I sat in the motel room with Rachel and Brooks. The listening device glowed on the table, connected to a laptop where messages streamed across the screen. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily, frantic. "Mom, where are you? Have you seen the kids? They're gone." I called the police. "I'm terrified." I clenched my jaw. How could she pretend so well? How could she type those words when she herself had planned their disappearance? Brooks raised a hand, shaking his head. "Don't answer. Let her trip herself up." Half an hour later, Emily's phone dialed an unknown number. The monitor crackled, and her trembling voice filled the room. "Victor, the children are gone. Everything was ready, but I can't find them." His voice came through sharp, impatient. "Calm down. We can't back out now. The tickets are already paid for. The buyer is waiting. If we don't deliver the merchandise, we're dead." That word, merchandise, sliced me open. My fists clenched, nails cutting into my palms. Olivia and Jack, my sweet little angels, reduced to merchandise. I wanted to scream, to confront Emily, but Brooks gestured firmly for silence. When the call ended, Emily sent more messages. "If we don't find the children, the whole plan collapses. Do something." Brooks gave a cold smile. "Let it collapse. That's what we need. The more they scramble, the stronger our case." Rachel squeezed my hand gently. "Margaret, we're close. Just a little longer." Her own voice shook, carrying my pain. But my chest still burned. Emily, the same girl who once sat in my kitchen kneading dough, who dreamed aloud of opening her own little bakery, was now plotting to sell her children. Every memory of her felt like a wound that only tore wider. Outside, the night pressed against the glass, heavy and starless. In the silence, I heard the low hum of unmarked engines idling in the distance, federal cars waiting in the dark, like wolves circling. Rachel leaned toward me. "Margaret, you did the right thing. You saved your grandchildren." I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Had I really saved them, or was I pulling them deeper into a nightmare? That night, as darkness wrapped Nashville in its grip, I sat inside a command van 2 blocks from a cheap roadside hotel. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of oil and cold coffee. My hands shook. I knew the end game was coming. Rachel sat beside me, her gaze sharp as steel, though her hands were clasped tight, betraying her tension. Agent Reynolds, who had reassured me earlier that morning, was adjusting the radio, her deep voice steady. "Margaret, just stay here and listen. We'll handle everything." But how could I stay calm, when my heart pounded so hard it felt like it would break through my chest? Olivia and Jack were safe in the playroom at the federal office, but the thought of hearing Emily's betrayal unfold in real time made my whole body shake. Over the radio, voices barked sharp commands. "Alpha Team, northeast corner, hold position. Bravo Team, cover the rear exit." The targets are moving toward the meeting point. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms. Rachel placed her hand gently on my shoulder. Margaret, it ends tonight. You did the right thing getting the children out. I nodded, but tears slid silently down my cheeks. The right thing? All I had done was run and beg for help. Yet deep inside, I knew I hadn't had another choice. Reynolds switched on the live feed. Emily's voice filled the van, fast and nervous. Victor, I don't understand. What are we going to deliver without the kids? The word deliver sliced through me. My blood burned with fury. How could she refer to Olivia and Jack, her own children, as if they were products in a deal? Victor Alvarez's harsh voice growled back. Shut up. First, we get to the hotel. The buyer's already there. If we don't bring the merchandise, we're finished. Merchandise. That word crushed me. Reynolds whispered into her radio, the targets are in the parking lot. Prepare to move in. Through the static, I heard a car door slam, then quick footsteps. I pictured Emily and Alvarez, tense shadows, heading straight into the trap. Then came the shout. Federal agents. Hands up. Boots thundered against the pavement, flashlights snapped on, and Emily's scream tore through the night. No. This can't be. There was a struggle. Victor, run, she cried. But another voice cut her off. Freeze. Hands in the air or I shoot. A heavy thud followed, Alvarez hitting the ground near a white van. Metal clicked as handcuffs locked in place. Emily's sobs filled the radio. You're wrong, I didn't do anything. Then came the sound of her purse spilling open, stacks of cash scattering across the pavement. An officer's voice was ice cold. Anything else you want to say? In the van, I broke. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't tell if I was crying from relief that the trap had worked, or from the unbearable truth that Emily, once my daughter-in-law, once the woman I loved like family, had been willing to sell my grandchildren. Rachel squeezed my hand. Margaret, it's over. The children are safe. But the pain inside me didn't ease. My mind replayed the younger Emily, laughing in my kitchen, kneading bread, whispering dreams of opening a bakery. That woman was gone. All that remained was a shadow, someone who had wanted to destroy us. The radio crackled again, both targets secured. Operation successful. No casualties. Outside, sirens wailed. Red and blue lights spun across the hotel walls. Officers barked orders, patrol cars revved, footsteps pounded. Chaos shook the night, but for me, it was the sound of a net snapping shut. Weeks later, I sat in the heavy air of the federal courthouse in Nashville. The benches were filled with neighbors and reporters, cameras ready, eyes sharp. I held Olivia and Jack close. They nestled into me, sensing the weight of the moment. Rachel rubbed my back, whispering, Margaret, it ends today. You've been brave. But how could I feel strong when my heart was in pieces? Emily entered the courtroom in a beige prison jumpsuit, her hair tangled, her face gaunt and hollow, 10 years older in a matter of weeks. No trace remained of the bright young woman I once defended, the girl I believed was part of our family. Alvarez shuffled beside her, head down, hands cuffed, refusing to look up. Seeing him, I felt nothing but cold emptiness. The prosecutor, a stern middle-aged man, rose to speak. Your Honor, this is a case of the highest seriousness. We present charges of money laundering, conspiracy to kidnap, and participation in a transnational criminal network. One by one, he laid out the evidence. The wire transfer receipt glowed on the big screen, its red numbers making the courtroom murmur. Then came the pile of fake passports, their false names echoing like ghosts of the network Emily and Alvarez had tied themselves to. Finally, the 3 plane tickets appeared, business class, Chicago to Madrid, Emily, Olivia, and Jack. My son's name wasn't there. My heart cracked. I gripped my grandchildren's hands so tightly they looked up at me in surprise. And then, the photo appeared. Olivia and Jack's innocent faces, circled in red. Gasps filled the courtroom, women in the back rows crying out, My God, how horrible! The murmur swelled into waves of disgust and horror. I pulled Olivia and Jack into my arms, covering their eyes. Grandma, what is it? Olivia whispered. My voice shook as I stroked her head. Nothing, sweetheart. Just an old photo. But inside, I wanted to scream until my body was empty. The prosecutor's voice rose, firm and sharp, as he played the recording of the phone call, the one that shattered everything. Emily's voice filled the courtroom, desperate yet cold. Victor, the children are gone. Without them, what are we supposed to negotiate with? Victor Alvarez's reply came sharp and clipped. First, go to the hotel. The intermediary is waiting. The whole room went silent. Only Emily's ragged breathing came through the speakers. Each word of hers felt like a blade, tearing apart every memory I once held of her as family. Her defense attorney rose quickly, clinging to some shred of hope. Your Honor, my client is a victim, manipulated by Victor Alvarez. She had no knowledge of the trafficking network and no intent to harm her children. But the prosecutor shot back, his voice slicing through the air. The defendant herself says she needed the children to negotiate. That is not the act of a victim. That is the act of an accomplice. On the screen, Emily's words replayed again, damning her. Alvarez sat silent, head bowed, as if resigned to his fate. The judge's gavel struck hard, echoing through the chamber. The defendants, Emily Lopez and Victor Alvarez, are hereby sentenced to lengthy prison terms for money laundering, conspiracy to kidnap minors, and participation in a transnational criminal organization. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the courtroom, some filled with disgust, others with quiet horror. Beside me, Rachel gripped my hand. I exhaled, a bitter knot in my throat. Justice had been delivered, but it couldn't erase the ache inside me. Then, I felt a tug at my blouse. Olivia's small voice whispered, "Grandma, where's Mommy?" Her question pierced me like glass. I pulled her tight, unable to answer. How could I tell her that the woman she adored was being led away in chains? Jack looked up, his big eyes wide. "Did Mommy go on a work trip, Grandma?" Silent tears slid down my cheeks as I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. She's busy. But Grandma and Daddy will always be here." They both accepted it with innocent trust, but I knew the scar of this truth would never fully fade. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the midday sun burned hot on the square. People bustled, laughter and chatter mixing with traffic, but to me, it was all a blur. Rachel took my hand. "Margaret, you saved them. You're their hero." I gave her a weak smile, though I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a grandmother, clinging to what was left of my family. The cruel truth had come out, but at least Olivia and Jack were safe. Months passed. Slowly, our lives found rhythm again in Nashville. I rented a small apartment near the square, where every morning the church bells rang like a gentle melody pulling me out of nightmares about Emily and Alvarez. The place was small, just a living room, a little kitchen nook, and 2 narrow bedrooms. But for us, it was a sanctuary. Every morning I rose early to make breakfast, an egg sandwich for Jack, cookies and milk for Olivia. I combed her hair, straightened his collar, and walked them to the elementary school beside St. Mary's Church. Watching them run inside, waving at me with bright smiles, sparked a fragile hope inside my chest. One afternoon, while I was watering chrysanthemums on the balcony, a yellow taxi pulled up. The door opened, and Michael stepped out, a travel bag slung over his shoulder, his shirt wrinkled from the long trip back from Chicago. He looked thinner, his face drawn, his eyes hollow as though carrying too many burdens. I dropped the watering can, water splashing across the balcony floor, and rushed to hug him. "Michael, you're home," I choked out, clutching him as if he might disappear. He hugged me back, then dropped to his knees, opening his arms as Olivia and Jack raced from the apartment, shouting, "Daddy! Daddy!" They threw themselves into him, laughter bursting into the air. For a brief moment, I saw his eyes light up again. That night, the 4 of us sat around the small kitchen table. I cooked the chili Michael had loved since he was a boy. The warm smell of corn and spices filled the apartment. Olivia chattered about her day at school. Jack proudly showed us a drawing his teacher praised. But beneath it all, the air was heavy, thick with the unspoken. When dinner ended, I sent the kids to their room with puzzles. I sat across from my son, my hands clasped to stop them from trembling. "Michael," I said quietly, "I need to tell you everything." And I did. From the afternoon at Martin's dry cleaners, when I found the coat with the transfer receipt and the photo of the children circled in red, to the overnight bus ride, the safe hidden under the dresser, the plane tickets to Madrid without his name, and finally, the trial that exposed Emily's betrayal. Each word cut both of us open. Michael sat in silence, his fingers buried in his hair, his eyes red. When I reached the part where Emily had called the children merchandise, he slammed his hand against the table. "Enough, Mom," he said hoarsely. He stood and paced the small room, his voice breaking. "The truth is, I suspected her for a while," he confessed. "She'd leave early, come back late, hide her phone. Money vanished. I'd ask her, and she'd say it was work. I didn't want to believe it. I thought I was protecting the family. But I was blind. I was a fool." His shoulders shook as he turned away. I rose and took his trembling hand, saying nothing, only sharing the weight of his pain in silence. His grief wasn't just over her betrayal, but over the helplessness of failing to protect his children. The kids emerged from their room, sensing the heaviness. Olivia clutched her yarn doll. "Grandma, is Daddy sad?" she asked softly. I nodded, pulling her close. "He's just tired, sweetheart. Eat a little more." Jack's voice chimed in, innocent as ever. "Daddy, can we play Legos tomorrow?" Michael forced a weak smile, stroking his son's hair. "Yes, buddy. Tomorrow." But I knew that smile was only a mask, covering a heart that had been shattered. After dinner, once the children were tucked away in their room, Michael sat down beside me. His voice was steady, determined. "Mom, I'm filing for divorce. I'm going to fight for full custody, and with your help, I'll build a new life for the kids." I studied his face, searching his eyes. There it was, a strength I hadn't seen in years. "Are you sure, Michael?" I asked, my own voice shaking. He nodded and squeezed my hand. "I can't forgive her, Mom. This isn't about me, it's about Olivia and Jack. They deserve a safe life. And I'll give them that." Tears blurred my vision, but I nodded. At last, my son had chosen truth over denial, even though it hurt. That night, I stood on the balcony. The street below was quiet, lit only by a flickering yellow lamp. From inside, I could hear Michael's voice as he read bedtime stories, mixing with the laughter of Olivia and Jack. "And then the teddy bear said, 'I'm not afraid of the dark anymore,'" he read. And Jack's little voice chimed in, full of awe. "What a brave teddy bear." The sound of turning pages, their giggles, and Michael's calm voice carried into the night. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and for the first time in so long, felt a hint of warmth return to my heart. Time moved quietly after that. The apartment I had rented slowly became a true home. The wounds of 3 generations, mine, Michael's, and the children's, began to knit back together. The court's decision finally arrived. Full custody of Olivia and Jack was granted to Michael and me. When I heard the judge's words, I sat on the sofa clutching a cup of hot tea, as if a crushing weight had finally been lifted from my chest. Every Sunday, I took Olivia and Jack to the park near St. Mary's Church. The bells rang, mixing with birdsong. Michael, with his new steady job in Nashville, would kick a ball across the grass with Jack, whose short legs raced after it with pure joy. "Kick it harder, Dad," he'd shout, smiling so wide his little face glowed. Meanwhile, Olivia pedaled her tricycle around the fountain, her ponytail bouncing in the wind. I'd sit on a bench with a cup of coffee, watching them play in the golden light filtering through the leaves. And in those moments, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. As if the storm had finally passed, leaving the sky clear again. One afternoon, the 4 of us strolled through the market in the town square. The air was thick with the scent of grilled hot dogs and fresh fruit. Olivia, eyes bright, picked out a worn comic book at a vendor's stall. "Grandma, this one has a princess who rides a dragon," she said, flipping eagerly through the pages. I smiled, stroking her hair. "That's a good choice, sweetheart. I'll read it to you tonight." Jack tugged on Michael's sleeve, pointing to a balloon shaped like a superhero. "Dad, buy me this one. Superheroes fly the highest." Michael laughed, pulled out his wallet, and bought it for him, while I quietly picked out tomatoes, corn, and fresh vegetables for chili. Simple moments like these, tiny pieces of a puzzle, were slowly putting our family back together. At home, I began taping Olivia's and Jack's drawings to the living room wall. One showed 4 figures: me, Michael, Olivia, and Jack, all holding hands beneath a red roof with a shining sun above us. Proudly, Olivia pointed. "This is our house, Grandma. I picked a red roof, because it's my favorite color." I smiled softly, though a lump rose in my throat. Their mother wasn't in that picture. No matter how hard I tried, that absence would always remain. I only hoped Michael's love and mine would be enough to fill the empty space in their little hearts. Sometimes I'd catch sight of Emily's face in the newspapers, thin, pale, lifeless behind bars. Every time, I folded the page quickly and shoved it into the trash, terrified the children might see it. They were too young to understand, and I wanted to protect their smiles from such a cruel truth. But deep inside, I knew the day would come when I'd have to tell them. At night, once Olivia and Jack were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the old journal I had started in those first desperate days. My handwriting steadied now, I wrote. Today, Olivia drew a family. She doesn't know that this red roof is all we have, but I will do everything I can to keep it standing strong. They will grow up surrounded by love and truth, never lies, never fear. And no one will ever again dare to mark their faces with a red pen. I closed the journal and turned off the light. Only the sound of their gentle breathing drifted from the next room, mingled with the whisper of the night wind outside the window. And sometimes, in my dreams, I still see Emily, not the woman in prison, but the younger one, nervously stepping into my home years ago with a bouquet of daisies in her hands and a shy smile. I wake up, and sometimes the tears slip down quietly, not from nostalgia, but from the sting of trust that was broken. But then I hear Olivia calling me from the living room, her voice bright as sunlight, or Jack's little laugh as he plays with his dad. And I know, I can't let the past drag me under. I wipe my tears, stand up, and start another day for my little family. One night, after I tucked the children in with their bedtime story, Michael sat with me in the living room. His voice was deep, steady. Mom, I found a good job here. I want to stay in Nashville. I want to raise the kids with you. We'll make it, right? I looked into his eyes and saw a resolve I hadn't seen since he was a boy. Of course we will, son, I said, taking his hand. We'll make it, because we have each other. Michael smiled, and for the first time in many months, his smile wasn't weighed down with sorrow. Later that night, as the street lamp cast soft lines of light through the curtains, I realized something. Our family, after the storm, had been reborn. It was a painful rebirth, yes, built on shattered pieces of love and trust, but it was alive with hope. I stepped onto the balcony and looked at the quiet street below. The bells from St. Mary's rang faintly in the distance, like a reminder that no matter how cruel the past had been, we, me, Michael, Olivia, and Jack, would keep moving forward. Love would be the beacon guiding us. Deep in my heart, I understood that what happened wasn't only our family's tragedy, it was a warning. Sometimes the one who wounds you most is the very person you trusted most. Blind faith, naive love, can be the open door that darkness slips through. But I also knew this: the love and courage of a mother, of a grandmother, is stronger than any shadow. It can protect. It can guide. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've been through something like this, share your story in the comments.